Okay, hi everybody. We're going to talk about web typography tonight, which includes a lot of the basic CSS properties to style text, and we're going to start with talking about how to install custom fonts. It's not hard, but there's some steps you got to go through. So we'll talk about that first because that's part of the exercise. Before I do that, any questions from previous stuff? We do have a lot to cover, so I'm going to ask that you keep your questions focused before we get started.
None.
None? Because you're in the Aurora Borealis.
Correct.
All right.
I had a comment. Hold on. It's rude to comment and not be a...
Oh, there you were.
Hello. So we made these 3 sizes so that we could see them, you know, on our devices.
Uh-huh.
And when I looked at it on my cell phone, I actually got the styles for the full screen of a computer. Even though on the computer, when I moved things over and shrank them and stuff, you know, it reflected my style sheet, which checked out. But my iPhone, both in Firefox and Safari, showed the styles for what would be the largest screen.
Did you have the meta tag in your head section? Trying to remember exactly how it goes. Let's take a look at your
Oh gosh, okay.
Can we look at your, yeah, all right, so I'm going to share my screen and
Let's see.
All right, let's see, can you see my screen?
Yes.
All righty, let's see here. I will go to a new window. Let's see, Teacher John. You may be missing a meta tag. We talked about this. I'm not sure I put it inside the exercise, and maybe I forgot to do that. And while we're, oh, here it comes, okay. Okay, so I'm gonna take a look at your HTML. And I am going to recheck it showing the source so that we can see this. It looks like, let's see, there's your style sheet. And there's your title, and you only have the okay. So I think the problem is there's a meta tag that you want. That's not there. It's a very simple thing to paste in. And let's see where. Did I not put it in the exercise? It could have been me not doing that properly.
Which tag is it?
It's a meta tag. And I think it's in, oh, did I not put it in here? Ah, okay. All right,
Oh,
okay. So if we go to one of these, let's see, where can I find it? We go see media queries, probably in this one. Yeah, you want to put this meta tag in. Let's see if they have it in this tutorial here. No, let's go. I just want to find something, a place you can copy and paste it. There it is. That right there. Can you guys see that? That right there?
Yes.
Yep.
Meta, yeah.
If you copy and paste that into your head section, I think it will fix it.
And where are you? You're at Developers, Google.
So what I did is I went to, it's in all the tutorials on CSS3 media queries, but I went to this one that says use CSS media queries for responsiveness, right there. And if you click on that from exercise 9 and you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see this media, this meta tag, which is somewhere right after, there it is. So it's kind of in the middle of the page.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, not that one. I'm sorry, that's the wrong
Oh.
one. That is not the right one. Where is it? That is not the tag. Here it is. I'm sorry, it isn't further down. It's this one. That's the meta tag.
So tell me what that is.
Well, what happens? Are you on an iPhone or a fairly recent phone?
It's an iPhone 6.
Yeah. So
No, so not a recent phone, no.
but it's a pretty high res phone compared to older phones. So your screen resolution on the iPhone is actually a lot. It's actually more. It's actually like
that's
a small.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, the resolution on those is really good. And so what this does, it kind of resets it to like a default for like, it kind of tries to make an average device out of the iPhone, out of anything with a really high resolution, it kind of rearranged. So basically what's happening is you're using the number of pixels for your breakpoints, which is what you should do. But there's so many more pixels on the small phone screens now than there used to be that if you don't put that tag in, the browser thinks it's kind of just like another computer screen with lots of pixels. So this kind of recalibrates that so that it doesn't see it as a high-res device in a sense.
So have we grown out of the exercise we just did?
No, I forgot to include that line in there. Is what it is.
I'm just wondering if screens are that sophisticated now.
They are.
That we don't even need to scale.
Well, that's not necessarily true because it's still a good idea. Even if the resolution is high, it's still a very tiny screen.
And will my phone just kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, that's nice, but it'll still go look.
No, it should do the right thing if you put that in there. Put that in there and tell us what happens.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's what's going on. And if you're not on a phone, what you did will work fine. But this should take care of the newer phones. And I forgot to put that in the exercise. I did mention it in the last week's Zoom, but I didn't realize I didn't have it in the exercise. So that's a good question. Thank you for reminding me to add that. More questions?
Where do you want that located in the header?
Yeah, this is meta tag, so it's in the head section. It's metadata. Anywhere in the head section.
Cool.
Oh, and by the way, Rebecca, when I looked at your head section, I saw that, I've already gotten rid of it. I saw that your character encoding meta tag was further down, and it's always good practice to put that as the very first thing in the head section, is your character encoding meta tag that says UTF-8. That should be the very first thing in your head section. It won't hurt anything if it's not, but that's just considered best practice, so that the browser gets that information as soon as possible. I'm sorry, there was another question. When Gary was talking, somebody else was talking? No?
Yeah, it's me, Yeso. Hi.
Hi, Ye.
So my picture height is cut off, and I don't know how to set it.
Can we take a look?
Yes, please.
Oh, what happened there? Let me just see if I can steal this picture. I cannot. Okay. Yeah, something's going on with your site. Let's see if I can get back there. I was looking for the validator button. Can I actually see it? No. Do you have validator buttons on here? Okay.
Yes, there is, just it's not really visual.
No, not history. I want to go to w3c.org. I'm going to plug it into the validator, and so we can look at it through that. And where do we have our validators? Validators. And let's throw that in there and check. So your HTML looks pretty good. And I want the CSS validator. They moved the link that used to be together. Okay, so we'll just find it. I'm going directly to the validator this time. And this is the CSS validator. So let's see if there's any problems in terms of the code. Code looks good, but let me now look at the code. Nope, that's not going to tell us much. Why is your page so weird looking is the question. Have you played with this at all? Let's see.
I guess
you're-
because of the picture size and the setting are not really
Let's
good together. I don't know.
let me just double check your breakpoints. Okay, so your first one is you've got a maximum width of 550 pixels. And that that means anything up to 550. So that's the small size. Then you have a minimum width of 551, and that's the next size up. And then you have a minimum width of 701 in the next size. That looks fine. So it must have to do with the size of the pictures that you chose. So the breakpoints look good. So the main stuff looks good. You're all valid code. Your breakpoints look fine in terms of they should be functioning. So let's see, background image, dinosaur small.
So small
Dinosaur
size
medium.
picture width 500 and height 386.
Let's go back to your page. You know what I didn't see? I didn't see. Your alignment. So you didn't do all of it. Do you remember how I said to align it in the center? You used a text align center, but
I
that
put it
doesn't
in
align
the
the background
body.
image.
Oh,
Oh, here it is. I'm sorry, I didn't see it. I'm sorry. For some reason, I was looking up here. Okay, no, you did that right. Background position center. Background position. No repeat. No repeat. Your page, though. Let's just take a look at how that looks. That's cutting off the image.
yes, the top of the image.
That's really weird looking.
My
I don't
dinosaurs'
quite.
heads are gone.
I'm not sure why that's happening. Now let me just try something. Huh. Okay, let's go into your folder. Let's see, where's my fetch? We'll figure this out yet. Okay, now, which one are you? How far down are you? I have to look up your number. Do you know which one you are?
I just don't remember. Wait.
Okay, I've gotta figure out. Okay, so here's what we'll do. It ends in 2991. Okay. How come I'm not seeing it? Let's see. Oh, there it is. Sorry. So it's these three, right?
Yes.
Those three. Yeah, the images do show the dinosaur, don't they? The dinosaur head.
Yeah.
I just want to open one up. Okay. So it's not that the image is cutting off the heads. It's really odd. I haven't seen this before. Okay. I thought for sure there'd be a problem there. Let's just look at your, oh, it's internal, isn't it? I'm gonna pull this up. And try brackets. You're seeing all this, right? You're seeing my screen?
Yes.
I just have to keep checking because it's really unnerving sometimes. Come on, open up. Oh, it's still bouncing. Okay. Now, do you see the bar with people's pictures at the top? No?
Which bar?
You don't see the tiles, the people's pictures?
Yeah, I can see it.
Oh, you do see this. Okay, I'm just wondering how it looks from your point of view. All right. And oh, by the way, you've got that meta tag in there, see?
Yeah, I just put it.
Oh, okay. Now you have background position center, background repeat, no repeat. That shouldn't cause a problem. Let's see what's going on here. Background image, text align center. So by the way, since you have text align center and the whole thing, you could just put text align center up here after background position. You know, you could add that there.
Then I don't have to repeat it.
And then you don't
right?
have to repeat it 3 times. Just
Okay.
not a big deal. But I don't see anything that's causing that. So this is really odd. Background repeat, no repeat. Background position center. Let's try something here. I'm going to go to HTML help anyway. So let's just make sure we're using these properties correctly. That's really odd. I don't understand why it's cutting that off. Did you was there ever a time when it worked and you made a change and it stopped and it started cutting them off, or
It was like that the
the whole
first
time?
at first.
Does it matter on the
Not
image
May. I had the same
size?
problem from my website too. My picture got cut off.
Does it matter
How
on the
did you fix it?
I don't understand why it's happening. So let me just make sure you've got background position center. Now, try putting center space center. Let's see here. I'm going to try something. Horizontal and vertical. Save that. Oh, I can't upload into your directory. So this is all self-contained
I'm
CSS except for
mimicking
the
you right
image.
now.
Pardon?
I'm mimicking you.
Oh, okay.
So center.
Try that. Try adding center and background position.
Okay.
See if that helps, to see if it moves it down. They don't really show you this, but let's see. So yes,
I think it's same.
center. Yeah, that should work. That doesn't move it down.
No.
I'm not sure why not. Everything looks good. It validates there's no typos. Let's just take a look at these images. That's the small one, that's the medium one, and that's the large one. And wow, the large one is really large.
I fix it.
Oh, how did you fix it?
I put center.
You put center.
Yeah.
That's creative. That shouldn't work. Center should work. I'm not sure why center. Did you try center?
Yeah, it
And
didn't
that
work,
didn't-
and I put center once more, and it worked.
Okay.
I don't know how it worked, but
Yeah, as you can see here, that's not one of the, okay. That's a new one on me.
thank you.
I assume the center would have worked. I still think it should just work at center. So, when you have some time to play, go back to the double center and then clear your browser cache or try a different browser to see if that does it. Because center is how that should, because one center is horizontal and then the second center is vertical, and so that would center it on the window. So not sure why the third center would work, but okay, let's let that go for now.
Okay.
But do a little
Thank
more
you.
playing with that. I'm going to experiment on that later. Okay, I'm glad it fixed it though. I've never even thought of putting 3 centers. 2 is supposed to fix that. Okay. What other questions do you have for now? Because if there aren't any, I want to move into some font stuff.
I have a question.
Yeah, Gabe.
Sorry, I was a few minutes late when you were explaining that meta tag for Rebecca and
That's this one right here.
and that would
That should make
essentially fix what problem?
Making it display the way you want on a phone.
Oh, okay, because I didn't. Okay, I haven't.
If your breakpoints aren't working on a phone, you need to put that in. Actually, you should put that in anyway. You should just put that in.
All right, so then I guess I do have another question, which is I'm only able to get my image to reduce to the second smaller size and not to the third.
Okay.
I realized watching you help Ye that I definitely left out like any alignment stuff. So I'm trying to update that now, but
let's take a look at yours. Okay, so let me make this big. Well, okay. Well, actually, I can't get any smaller. And what was your smallest breakpoint? Because I can't get this window to go any smaller in this browser. Let me try a different browser.
The smallest breakpoint was 999 pixels.
Oh, well, that's pretty large. If that's your smallest.
That's what I was. So I kept messing with it, trying to find what that like threshold was, and I just couldn't.
Well, 900 pixels is very, very wide. So your small breakpoint should be more on the order of 300 or 400 pixels wide. I'm just saying. But that doesn't make sense in terms of what so you're saying you don't see the large size or the small size?
Well, maybe it's that I've never seen the large and I assumed it was the large one, but I can't get it to reduce to what I thought was the small size. So. Oh, there you go. Was that it? No.
I'm in different browsers here. Let me just try something. I have to look at your breakpoints. So I see the 2. I don't get to the smallest one, but that doesn't mean it won't happen. It just means my window doesn't get any smaller. So I have to look at your breakpoints. Let's take a quick look at your breakpoints. Let's see, which number are you? Does that say?
I just changed something in there too.
656. Are you? That one? Wait.
Yeah, 56.
Ends in 896. Wait, no.
89656. That's mine.
Oh, that's yours? No, that's not yours.
No. 89656.
656. It's that one. There you are, Gabe. Okay. I just want to pull it out to take a quick look at it. That's you, right? Oh, okay. So, so what you're starting with is you're saying that your default background is the MG underscore logo, okay? Before any breakpoints are rendered. Now, maximum width 990, you're saying to use the small. Between 1000 and whether to use the medium. And yeah, that's what's happening is, yeah. What's happening is you're not seeing I think you're not seeing the large size. You're seeing the small and the medium. These breakpoints should be adjusted. So you should adjust these down quite a bit. So I would
Okay.
start with a max width of like 350 or 400 at the most. And
Okay.
then move these down as well. And I think then you'll see all 3 breakpoints in action, but the code looks right. Just the breakpoints are a little extremely large.
350. So what do you think the middle range should be?
Play with it. Do a 400, 600, 800 maybe. Wait, let me see the way you've written it. You've done a max. Oh, okay, so you're doing it this way with a max width first. And then you're doing min width to max width, and then you're doing, yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, put this one down to like, I don't know, 400. Put this one down to like 600 to 800, and then over 800. Something
Okay.
like that. And give that a try. But everything looks good in what you've done. Your code's good. I would just change. I would just adjust your breakpoints. Play with your breakpoints until you see what you want to see with your 3 breakpoints.
Right. Okay.
And
I
everything
didn't
else
realize
looks
that
good.
was the opposite.
Yeah, everything else looks good. Looks great.
Okay.
Hey,
Thank you.
more
John?
questions?
John, I have a quick question.
Surely.
Hold on.
Is that Rebecca?
Yeah.
Who is it? Yeah.
So I did what you said, and then what happened was the picture on my phone, the title and the heading, the top was white, and the picture didn't start until lower because it was centered. So I went into the styles for just that size,
Right.
and I did I think I did background position top center, so it moved up, and that looked fine, except that when I have it on my phone, you can't see this, but it cuts the image, the background cuts off before the rest of the web page shows. So in other words, the picture's now too short. So there's more content below where the background ends because it's set at no repeat. That makes sense? So my screen on my phone is like a portrait, but my background is a landscape. So is that just something that I need to be cognizant of whenever I pick background images?
I'm not quite catching this. So let me let's look at your code. Okay, so this is the page, right?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Whee.
So there's 3 settings.
Aha.
Oh, I got an error.
Some weird little error. Let's see.
I didn't check that. I didn't validate. Now I feel bad.
Yeah. Well, the first step of all troubleshooting is validating. So this is probably an easy fix. Let's take a quick look here. My guess is if you fix your validation error and then make sure your styles are what you want, it'll work. So it's saying you just have a little validation error. What is it exactly saying? Actually, I don't see an error there.
I don't either.
Oh, you know what? I think, let's see, meta translate equals UTF-8. That looks fine. It's saying it wants it earlier up, found after the first 1024 bytes. Okay, so remember I said that you always want to put that tag in the top of the head section?
Okay.
Well, apparently yours is too far down in the head section.
Okay.
Usually it doesn't make a difference, but because, wait, that's not yours. But because you've got all this stuff in the head section, and then maybe adding that one more line just kicked it down. So you want to take that line and you want to put it all the way up here right after head,
Okay.
and then give it a shot.
Okay.
I'm not sure that's causing the problem, but you still want to fix that.
Certainly.
Now, I'm still not understanding what the
Okay,
original
so
problem was.
if you start to scroll in so that it looks more vertical than horizontal,
Like here's a break point.
keep going, keep going, keep going, narrower, narrower, narrower.
Yeah,
One
again,
more
this
narrow.
doesn't. Yeah, I
Keep
can't.
going.
Yeah, I can't do it on this browser.
Oh, you.
Let me
you
try it with
can't.
a different. Some browsers let me do it. Let me try this one. What am I in here now? I'm in Firefox. Let's see. Firefox lets me get smaller.
It might.
Oh yeah, it does. Firefox lets me get smaller. There we are.
Okay, so if you open that further down at the bottom, you'll see that the text runs off the background.
Right, and it's white. Yeah. Okay.
And that's because I picked an image that's very landscapey, not
Well,
is
it's
that-
also because you made the text white at that breakpoint size, and
right. But we want it to show up with a background, and
Yeah.
because I just want to understand that.
yeah.
it
Well,
said
this
it-
wasn't. Yeah, to be honest with
I
you,
know.
this wasn't the most
Yeah.
practical of exercises. This was just getting you
No, I get it.
understand how breakpoints operated.
Got
But
it.
yeah, if you understand what's going on here, that's
Yeah.
good enough. So basically, yeah, all that's happening is that your background stops, and then you've got white, and then your white
Got
text
it.
doesn't show up.
Okay,
But
thanks.
but it's there. It's there.
I'll
You
go-
can have white on white.
Thank you. I'll go move my Bobos up the
Yeah.
up the.
Now,
pike a
what you
bit.
can also do is you can add another background dash color to the body
Right.
and give it a pale color or something, and then
Sure, sure.
that white will show through that, or maybe a dark color. But yeah, and that so you can do that.
I
normally.
actually had a background color in there, and then I removed it because it wasn't part of the exercise. But it might be a good thing to have just sort of default in
Yeah.
case something like
Yeah.
that comes up.
But the
Okay.
important thing, I understand what's going on, and I'm not worried
Yeah.
about it. The important thing is you understand how the breakpoints work.
Got it.
That was the whole point.
Okay.
And
of course-
that's an
of course-
important point.
Yeah, and it didn't do that, of course, before I put that meta tag in that you suggested.
Oh well, but see that fixed it, but then
Yeah.
you saw what the styling was doing. Yeah, yeah.
Right. No
Yeah.
worries.
Well, that's how it works. That's how this business works. You fix your errors and then you keep going.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So, unless there's any other questions, I want to move into some new material and talk about fonts, web fonts. Let me stop sharing my screen for a minute. It's driving me crazy. Stop share. Okay. You can all see me now, right? Are we good?
Yep.
Okay. So, the web has a short history, but in that short web history, a lot has changed relating to typography and fonts. Oh, Yay has a hand raised. Yay? Are you there?
Sorry, I did it before.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, so in the beginning of the web, there weren't a lot of controls on a lot of graphical elements, and the typography was pretty limited. So the deal with fonts is this. Fonts are, how should I put this? Fonts are, it should be highlighting me. Hello, no, okay. We go to gallery view. Sorry, just trying to get this good for the recording. Fonts are a property of the operating system of the computer. Okay, so when you install a font in the computer, you're installing it in the operating system. Now, you can also install fonts specifically into specific applications, or you can install fonts available for specific users of your computer. But generally speaking, when you install a font by default, it's available for all programs and all users. Okay, unless you put it in a different place than where it wants to go, which is your library of fonts for all your users. Now, that means that you don't control the fonts in the user's computer. So what used to be true for web design is that you were fairly limited to the font set that was installed in most users' computers. And over time, that font set has increased dramatically. But if you remember many, many years ago, there was like a pretty boring set of fonts that you could count on that most people had, you know, Arial, Helvetica, Times, you know, Bookman, Palatino, Times New Roman, Verdana. If you were lucky, Comic Sans. That's a joke. Anyway, So in the beginning of the web in the 90s, people limited themselves to those fonts that they could count on being in users' computers, whether it was Mac or Windows. And that didn't give us a lot of creativity. Then people came up with all kinds of extremely creative ways to use more custom fonts that were not available in the user's computer. And those involved things like making pictures of the type, like especially for headlines and things. If people wanted a specific stylized headline, they would actually go into Photoshop and they would do it with a font they had, and then they would save that as a picture of the text. And then they would put the picture on the web page, kind of like a headline. But it wasn't really a headline, it was a picture of a headline. But that's how you could get the headline, at least, of the font you wanted. And people did all kinds of, shoehorning and jury rigging like that. Then people wrote scripts to kind of automatically, on the fly, create images of the text, and using a PHP script or JavaScript and so forth. People got pretty creative, all kinds of ways to get around this limitation that you couldn't really count on fonts being installed in the user's computer, because you don't install fonts in everybody's computer, just your own. And my Teacher John site, which was built many years ago, actually uses a PHP script to kind of do those headline fonts. They're not even real. It's a long story. But anyway, now browsers are supporting the latest font standards, which allow you to use any font you want. So the way that works is that you take a font that you want to use on your website. Maybe it's an odd font. You upload it to the web server. And the convention is that you create a fonts folder called fonts, F-O-N-T-S, lowercase, kind of like your images folder is images and your CSS folder is CSS. And maybe if you have JavaScript, it's in a folder called JS. Well, now you're going to have a fonts folder in your public HTML. And that's where you put all your fonts. And that's the convention. And then you, in a sense, you link to those fonts through your style sheet. And by doing that, the user comes across your page. And here's how the browser works when it comes across a page, and we're talking about fonts. The browser looks at your style sheet. The browser says, oh, the style sheet says it should be Arial. And the browser looks in the user's computer and says, oh, this user has Arial, displays Arial, you're done. Now, you can have a font declaration that has a cascade. As you remember, the font family cascade could say Arial, comma, Helvetica, comma, Verdana, comma, whatever. And then it could end in a sans serif or serif generic font. So the browser will go through that cascade. So if the browser goes, oh, they don't have Arial, and they look, oh, but I found Helvetica, so the browser uses that. And the browser goes, oh, they don't have either of those. It goes right down the line on your style sheet until it doesn't find anything, and then it just defaults to whatever font the browser default is set to, probably something boring like Times. But that's not very satisfying. So now, under the new system, you put custom fonts in your fonts folder. So now the browser comes along and it looks at your style sheet, and it sees in your style sheet that you have specified a custom font. And in your style sheet, and we're going to go through exactly how this works. I'm giving you the overview first. We're going to look at the code in a minute. So the browser goes, oh, they want to use special font. And in your style sheet, it has, guess what? A path to the font in the fonts folder. Just like it finds images with a path to the images folder, and just like it finds style sheets with a path to your CSS folder and finds the style sheet. In your style sheet, you're going to have a path to your fonts folder and the specific fonts that you want to use. And so what the browser does now we're talking about modern browsers. And when I say modern browsers, I mean most browsers in use today, because this system didn't work 10 years ago. I mean, in theory it did, but the browsers didn't really support it. Now you can reasonably count on all the browsers in use to support this what we call at font face rule, which allows you to use these custom fonts. So now a modern browser will go, oh, they want me to use this font in the fonts folder. And so what the browser does is it looks at that font name that you're specifying. And the first thing it does is it checks the user's computer still to see if the font is there. If the font that you're specifying, some oddball font, the user happens to also have installed in their operating system, then the browser will just use that, because the browser doesn't need to go download yet another font because the user already has it. So the browser will just use it because it's in the user's computer. If the user doesn't have this oddball font or this custom font in their operating system, then the browser will download the font from the web server where you have it in the fonts folder. It'll download that font to the user's operating system, and now the user has the font, and now the browser can display the font using the font that's on the user's hard disk, because the browser just copied it to the hard disk, it just downloaded it. So that's how the system works. That's the big picture. So now that that is something that all the browsers in use support, you can use virtually any font you wish. All you have to do is make sure you have the right font specified and the right paths, and that you have the fonts in the proper font format that the browser understands. There are many different browser formats. There are true type fonts and open type fonts and PostScript fonts, and there are lots of different font formats. So what used to plague us up until very recently was that even though the browsers would support the specs that say this is how the system's supposed to work, the browsers wouldn't necessarily support all the different font formats. So you had different companies that were promoting their own format, Microsoft, when Disney, and Apple, and Firefox, and so forth. And so it's kind of calmed down a little now. So now you can get away with just having a few font formats that will work with virtually all browsers. So what you have to do, however, is you have to take the font you want to use. You have to run it through what's called a font generator. The font generator creates the proper font formats that are the most common for most of the browsers, and gives you that, and then you have to upload those font files into your font folder. And so that's called using a font generator. Now, for the purpose of demonstration exercise, I'm going to use the font generator on the fontsquirrel.com site, and that's probably the best one. It's one of the oldest ones, and it's the one that most people use. There are others, but FontSquirrel is the standard. Now, that said, there's yet another way to do this, which is basically doing what I just said, but instead of looking at a font on your server, you go to another server, such as Google, right? So there are these services like Google Fonts, you've probably heard of, maybe you've used Google Fonts. It's the same thing. All you're doing in that case is your CSS style sheet is linking to a font on Google's server instead of your own server. And there's nothing wrong with that, and it works quite well. But one, you're limited to the fonts that Google lets you use, which actually has dramatically increased over time. They've got lots of fonts. But that doesn't allow you to use any font you want. That just allows you to increase your font universe to what Google is offering you. But number two, the other thing is, now for your page to load properly, not only does it have to load files from your own web server, it has to go out in the internet, go over to Google and download the font from the Google server, right? Now, that's normally not a problem at all, because Google's pretty establishment company, pretty much owns a lot of the web. And so there you can kind of rely on their servers being up 24/7, and it works pretty well. But you are introducing another variable into the equation of when your web page loads. Not only does it have to load files from your web server, it has to go get the ones from Google too, or whatever font service you're borrowing those fonts from. So that works reasonably well. But if you want to use any font you have, that you have the legal permission to use, that's the other piece of this, then what I'm going to show you how to do using FontSquirrel font generator is the way to go. So for the purpose of the exercise, you're not going to use Google Fonts, which is quite easy to use because they give you a little line of code you copy and paste that just basically links your style sheet to their font server. You're going to use your own font and install it on your own server and use it that way. But it's the same exact system as using Google Fonts, except that you're actually controlling the fonts. You're putting them on the server. You have to do the font massaging to get the proper font format and everything, but that's very easy to do. So we're going to go over that system of how to install and use custom fonts. Let me stop there for questions. Is that explanation clear to you as to the theory of what's happening here?
Yes.
I have a
Okay.
question.
Okay, I saw Gary's hand first, and then we'll get Gabe. Gary.
What is font massaging? That is.
Oh, that's using the font generator and creating the like for example, if you start with a TrueType font, a TTF, a TrueType font, the font generator will generate a few other formats like a WOF font, Web Open Font Format, or whatever that stands for, which is now one of the standards. So what the font scroll generator will do is it'll create a WOF and I think a WOF2, and using a WOF or a WOF2, those two font formats are supported by pretty much all the browsers, maybe not Opera, or maybe not Opera Mini for the phone, but pretty much all the browsers except for Opera Mini for the phone. I can't remember, but it works very reasonably well. And you don't have to have, see, like several years ago, you would use a font generator, maybe you would give it a TrueType font, and the font generator would spit out like 6 different font formats. And you'd literally have to install all 6 because some browsers use this and some browsers use that, and the other browser use that. But now, Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Edge, all the main browsers in use now support one of the two main, like WOF or WOF2. So it's gotten a lot simpler. It's not as simple as it could be, but we're moving in that direction, and it's fairly simple. That's what I meant by font massaging, was creating the proper font format. So, good question. Gabe, you had a question.
Yeah, maybe this will be explained further, but is using a font generator mean you're limited to the fonts on fontsquirrel.com?
No. The good question. No. Font Squirrel has 2 functions there. One, they have the generator to use, but the other is they're a font downloading site, just like millions of others. And so you could download a font from Font Squirrel and then upload it to their generator to do the massaging. Or you can start with any font from anywhere and upload it to the Font Squirrel generator. You don't have to start with a Font Squirrel font. Font Squirrel is a site that both has lots of fonts that you can download and use or buy, as well as the generator. And we're just going to use Font Squirrel for the generator. But you could use Font Squirrel for everything. You go to Font Squirrel, you could find a font you want, you could download it, then you could upload it to the font generator at Font Squirrel. So yeah, so Font Squirrel is doing 2 things there. They have the generator, and that's what we want to use it for. They also are a host for a bunch of fonts. And there are many sites where you can download free or commercial fonts. I mean, hundreds of them, lots of fonts. So it's 6:53, so let me keep talking conceptually, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll do it. Yeah, Leslie. You're muted. I do this all the time. I do that all the time myself, I know.
All the fonts that are downloading to people's computers, do they automatically go away after when I quit my browser?
No, they stay there.
Are you serious?
Yes, as you want them to, because if you visit that site again, you don't want to re-download the font again. So see, there's a little bit of a, okay, so this depends on how many fonts you're using and how big those font files are. But as I explained, when somebody goes to your site for the first time, and it checks the font you want to use, and then it looks at the user's operating system and doesn't find the font, it downloads it to the user's computer, where it stays. It doesn't disappear. It stays. Now, a user can control that. You can say purge these things, but but by default, it stays there. So that the next time that user goes to your site again, it already has the font. No, and there's no delay. There's no lag. Even if it's only a few seconds, it just automatically starts using the font because it already has it. Whereas somebody new coming to your site, the very first thing that has to happen is they have to download the font to use it. Now, obviously, there's going to be a couple second delay there, depending on how many custom fonts you're specifying and how big the font files are. So if you're using like 20 different custom fonts on, let's say, your homepage, and somebody goes to your homepage, well, the browser goes, whoa, and the browser downloads all the fonts before it can generate the page. So that can take some time. And it doesn't take much time, but it's bandwidth and it's time. So you do want a system where they only have to wait once, and then they never have to download that font again. That's a really good question. I was going to get into the more logistics of the downloading. So it's the time that you don't want the user to have to wait too long to see your font. So that's kind of a little bit of the downside of using a custom font, is that there is going to be, I see your hand, Tony, we'll get you next. There is going to be, the first time that they go to your page, they do have to download the font. Now, that's not going to be a long time. It might be a few seconds. But it does add up if you're using lots of fonts and they're big files. well-designed font families are not that big. But you can go to some of these free font sites and find some of these really bizarro designed fonts that were not designed professionally, that were designed by, you know, Joe Blow that has an old copy of Fontographer and created a font based on his handwriting or whatever. And that font file could be huge because it's not designed with Bezier curves. It's not designed in an efficient vector manner. It might have been designed by merely making bitmap images and then converting them to vectors, and it doesn't really work as well as if you create it with a vector program. You probably understand that more than some people. But so the better professionally designed fonts are smaller font sizes, and so that's important. The other thing, well, maybe I'll stop there on that explanation. Yeah. Is that helpful? Okay, and somebody, Tony, do you have a question? Saw your hand up before.
Yeah, I have a question. So we don't have to make a font from scratch.
Oh, absolutely not. That will be a course unto itself.
Okay, so we just have to find one on the font generator.
Absolutely. And after the break, I'm going to go through the whole process.
Okay, thanks.
You'll see from start to finish.
Okay,
and that will help you.
okay.
And you'll see it's not that hard. And being able to use whatever font you want is really, I mean, it's kind of like the shackles come off.
Okay.
Because you don't have to use the same fonts that everybody uses. Okay, 6:57. So I'll talk a few more minutes conceptually. We'll take a break. So when we talk about fonts, fonts are, of course, created by somebody. They're copyrighted. They're owned. This is like images, where you can't just download anything and use it on your website. I mean, you can, but it might not be legal or ethical. So luckily, there are so many fonts out there and so many free fonts and so many fairly good free fonts out there. It's not usually a problem. But if you are going to go searching for a font, we'll do that after the break, one of the things you have to decide is, if you're going to follow the law, which I highly recommend, you don't want to use a font that doesn't give you the licensing to use it. So licensing rights for fonts cover a range of possible uses, from commercial to non-commercial, personal use okay, not okay, commercial site you got to pay. It might be, oh, you can use this font for flyers, but not for posters. You can use this font for print, but not the web. You can use this font embedded on your website if you pay or whatever, you know. So the licensing is all over the map. And so when you search for your fonts, one of the things you're going to do, what we'll do is we'll look at the what's called the licensing rights, or the EULA, okay, EULA, End User Licensing Agreement. So the EULA, pretty much any font that you download comes with the EULA. The EULA is a text file. You open it up and it says, this font's free for any use, free for commercial use, whatever. And you're like, cool. Or it might say, this font is free for commercial use. Unless you want to embed it in a website, then you want to pay $20 or whatever. So you have to look at the EULA and make sure that you have not only the rights to use it personally and commercially, if you're going to use it commercially, but also if you're going to put it on the web, it has to specifically say it's okay for the web, or at least not prohibited for the web if it says it's free. So reading the EULA is an important part of your font skulking and searching. Luckily, again, you can do all kinds of searches for free web font, blah, 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 and thousands of fonts will appear before your eyes. And I'll show you some sites to find good fonts on. A good question. Any questions? Any more questions? Okay, this is a perfect time. It's 6:59 and 58 seconds. So we're going to call it 7 o'clock. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we're going to play with fonts. Okay, folks?